Hi, everyone, and thank you to our colleagues in Buenos Aires for passing the torch. Welcome to Los Angeles. My name is Sawyer Hescock. I'm the director of TUMO Los Angeles, which is coming live this summer. And I'm happy to welcome the global audience as well as a local audience. Thank you all for being here. And I'm terribly excited for an amazing panel of speakers today, both adult and teen. Please join me in welcoming our first speaker calling in from New York. Nick Thompson is the CEO of The Atlantic magazine, was former editor of Wired, is a thought leader, public speaker, author at the intersection of technology, society, and civil human communication. So please welcome Nick Thompson.
Hello, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here. Delighted to be here. Delighted to have just followed that wonderful panel that I was not able to catch all of because my Spanish isn't perfect, but caught enough of to know it was terrific. What I'm going to talk to you about now is my philosophy of how a young person should think about AI. How someone who's heading into this complicated world should think about how to learn, should think about their career, and should think about the role they're going to play with it. So my first principle, and the first thing I want to say, is that I really believe that AI will probably be the most important thing that changes the world that we're in and the way that we live. It's going to turn all of our lives inside out, upside down, change it. It's going to dramatically change my profession of journalism. There's going to be a lot that's good. There's going to be a lot that's bad. There's going to be a lot that's frightening. There's a lot that's going to be exciting. There's a lot of money that's going to be made, a lot of money that's going to be lost. It is going to be one of the defining features of the next decade. I don't know exactly how powerful it will be. I can make a pretty good argument that it'll be a bust, all that we've seen right now. I can make a very strong argument that there won't be. I can make an argument that we're heading towards AGI. I can make an argument that we're not. But I definitely believe it will be profoundly disruptive. So my first principle, for everybody who's young and for everybody who's old, and I try to push this at my company, is that you should definitely be using it, learning it, understanding it. I use it all the time. I'm writing a book. I use it all the time and try to use it to understand what it's good at and what it's not good at. There's benefits that I get. It's like an amazing research assistant, but it's also really important to know, okay, this trips it up. It's not good at this. Like I've learned that it's amazing at going through notes and comparing notes to text, and I've learned that it's terrible at writing. It's interesting to try to think about that. I try to get my kids to use it, not to write their papers, but to understand, just so they can understand the different models, just so they can see. If you don't use it, you can't really understand it. I talk to too many people who dismiss it and say, oh, it's not good. It can't do this. It gets it wrong. I told him this. That's just not the way to look at it. It can be really helpful. It can be completely wrong. So principle number one is use it, understand it, and learn it. I think it's an amazing tutor too. A great way to learn things quickly. Every day I do a video, right? I do a 3-minute video on the most important thing in tech. Often I will put the idea that I have and I'll have the AI challenge it. I'll say, hey, you are a critic. Tell me what's wrong with what I'm thinking. It is a fabulous way to learn. I have my kids when they're stuck. I say, hold on, let's go. Let's check it out in Claude. Let's see whether we can understand this math concept together. I can't teach it to you. Your math is beyond me. Let's understand it. It is an amazing tutor. There's all kinds of data showing that kids who use it as a tutor benefit immensely. It's also really important. This is really important. All the data shows that men are using it more than women. That is not good. It will be much better if the benefits and uses are spread equally. Now, there is a risk. One of the biggest risks of technology is what's called cognitive offloading, right? If you use Waze or Google Maps instead of walking to a place, eventually you won't know how to get there, right? You just push somebody's picture in your phone, you won't memorize their phone number. Some of that's not that big a problem, right? We were probably better at multiplying large numbers before we had calculators. But AI can do the thinking process. And we don't want to weaken those skills. There's an amazing, but also terrifying report in the Financial Times just yesterday showing that the average ability of humans sort of across all cognitive tiers and across a whole range of problems, our ability to solve logical problems has been declining steadily since more or less the invention of the smartphone, since about 2012. We don't know why. Nobody really understands this. There will surely be people who poke holes in this. But there is a lot of evidence. The more you use your phone, more dependent you become on it, and then the less intelligent, creative you are when you don't have it. When you have it, you have access to all this information, but you become dependent on it. And now there's a huge risk with AI. What if we let AI be this crutch to solve our complicated problems? What if whenever we have a complicated problem, our first instinct is to go to the AI? That is a real problem. So we need to study it. We need to learn from it. But we also need to be able to be smart, creative without it. We need to be able to put our phones down and be able to learn and think without all the AI. All right, so that's principle number one. Study, embrace, learn, but be aware of the risk. Second thing is you go through the next step, and as you go through high school, you go into college, you enter in the workforce. The workforce of tomorrow is going to be very different than the workforce of today. A lot of jobs are going to change. My instinct with all new technologies, the number of new jobs created has been higher than the number of old jobs destroyed. My guess is that will be the same thing with AI. There will be more jobs, there'll be more things to do, but there will be a lot of professions that are at risk, that are changed. There'll be tasks that are removed. I don't think people will be working in call centers in a couple of years. My profession, journalism, is at real risk. One of the most interesting things about AI is that for a long time, people thought the blue collar work was most at risk from technology, and it was during the last technological revolution. All the wealth went to urban areas, went to white collar workers, went to people with college degrees. But now, actually white collar work is most at risk. The AI has been trained on text models. It has been trained on human writing. These professions are going to be changed a lot. I think a lot about my profession, journalism. Part of my job is to make my business, The Atlantic Magazine, which I hope you all read, resilient to AI. So what do? Well, I try to think about what is AI good at, what is AI not good at, and therefore, what can we do? I try to think through how it's going to change the web, right? AI is definitely going to change the way search engines work. Okay, so we need to figure out how our magazine can exist in a world without search engines. Okay, what are the things in writing that AI is not good at? It's amazing at summaries. It's amazing at short descriptions of things that is already known. It is devaluing the known, but therefore it's adding more value to the unknown. So I'm trying to push our magazine to do more reporting, to do longer stories, to write more with style, to do things that are orthogonal to AI. And I think that is a good principle for all businesses. You could go into a business that is more resilient, that is strong where AI is weak, then is more likely to last for a long time. So you should have all the skills with AI. As you go into the workforce, you can see this in job listings. There's a study that came out last week. The number of job listings that are asking for people who know how to use AI has been skyrocketing. Unquestionably, if you can use it, you're skilled at it, you understand it, you will have more job prospects, you will have more opportunities in work. But you also should be thinking about how resilient is the business you're going into. You should make your choice mainly based on passion, because it's impossible to understand what exactly is going to change, or certainly I don't know what's going to change. A couple other things where they're more resilient. If a job involves emotional connections, it'll be more resilient. If a job is in a highly regulated industry, it'll be more resilient. If a job involves manual dexterity and the things that robots aren't good at, it'll have more resilience. So be thinking about that, as you figure out the next steps. And then also, one of the craziest things that's about to happen with AI is that we're going to stop really being able to know who's real. Like, you know who I'm real right now. Very high confidence. I've been invited, I've been introduced. You can Google a picture of me. I look just like me. The gestures are the same. I have the same eyebrows. But in not long, it'll be pretty easy to make simulation of me. In fact, I think the greatest sin of the AI industry has been the focus on making AI as much like humans as possible. That is the thing that has brought the harms of the AI industry. When AI makes tools, when it makes specific things, when it helps you figure out problems like new building materials, protein folding, unambiguously good. AI to create simulations of humans, well, that's complicated because you're going to be at events and you're going to see holograms, videos. You're going to be on social media. You're going to have companies, as the famous line goes, that do not love you, but do want your money. They're going to know that they can manipulate with AI, that they can push your buttons. They're going to know more about you in some ways than you know about yourself. They're going to know a lot about you and they're going to manipulate you. And you're going to go into social media and there'll be a picture. It's finely tuned to be exactly what you think is attractive. And it's going to say exactly what will excite you. And you have to be able to resist that. You have to be able to figure out that. And that's part of what understanding AI is about. Knowing when the AI companies are trying to push you. So that goes to my last point and what I want to close with. If there's something that I could recommend, there's something that I want young people to do. I had a really good conversation about 2 or 3 weeks ago with Audrey Tang, who's the former digital minister of Taiwan, and one of the people I think is my AI intellectual heroes. Someone really pushing for the benefits to humanity to outweigh the costs. And there's a path you can go in AI. You can go work for one of the big companies. You can work on safety, work on explainability, work on ethics, work on building moral principles into AI. That is great work. That is God's work. Some of that is the most important work there is. But I think that really the thing that I'm most hopeful from the next generation with AI is that there are people out there who aren't part of the headlong rush for wealth, for power, for all powerful AI. People are out there building tools to help solve specific problems, ethical problems, to help identify, help build tools so we can know who's real, help build tools so we can build the right values into these systems, building tools that can be adopted into open source AI and then can feed into the large AIs. In fact, one of the things that Audrey said is that there's like a vertical race. And the vertical race is the race to build AGI, the race to make billions of dollars, the race to make trillions of dollars. And there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot to be said for that. And there's some companies that are doing wonderful things. I talk about it a lot. But there's also a horizontal race. There are people out there building specific tools, solving one problem at a time, thinking through. I was just looking at a company the other day. It's really trying to understand, when is text written by AI? When is written by humans? That is a real problem to solve. If you solve that problem, well, then that information can be fed back into the whole ecosystem. So one of the tasks is to build this good horizontal AI that runs counter to the vertical AI. So that's my hope for the next generation, that people come, they study AI, they learn AI, think about the risks, they think about the benefits, they prepare for a future where AI is really important, and they build these tools. They build wonderful tools that are helpful, that help us become more human, that help build ethics into the system, and that will help make us as a society prosper in what are surely going to be turbulent times. So that's my hope. I love that there's so many smart people out there thinking about this. I love talking to young people about this topic. So thank you very much for letting me speak with you for a few minutes today.
Nick, thank you so much for your time and for your comments. I think those principles are critical. And I think the audience here today, that's definitely one of the take homes that they'll have. We're very lucky to have our next speaker calling in, I believe from Pittsburgh. Jake Loosararian is the founder of Gecko Robotics, a company that is at the bleeding edge of both robotics and AI. They use their technology to maintain and monitor critical infrastructure around the US and around the world. Jake, I know that you've only got a couple minutes today. Our schedule's a little bit shifted, but we would love to hear your comments for as long as we can have you. And when you need to run, that's completely okay.
Thank you so much. It's great to join you all. Yeah, I'll give you. I'm excited to dive into my story a little bit. The story about how sometimes when you look in areas where there's people aren't really looking for solutions, you end up finding some secrets hiding in plain sight. Maybe let's see if I can share my screen. Okay, not sure people can see this or not, but. So I found a Gecko out of my college dorm about 10 or 12 years ago. And what we do is we build robots and software to help diagnose the health of the built world. And started in a college dorm, and now we manage over 500,000 critical assets that power the world and the economy today. And so I'll describe the problem a little bit as it frames how existential I think this all is. Most people don't really think about this that much, but the assets that we use to power civilization have roughly reached their useful life. Out of the 17,000 bridges in New York, only 6 are not in need of immediate repairs. And critical assets that run power plants, for example, in the US, have only about 4 years left of useful life. And it's a really big problem, but really people don't really think about, things like bridges or dams or power plants not being there for us. But we definitely should. It's the worst as it's been in the energy and public infrastructure, mining, manufacturing sector since World War II. So that's beginning to hold economies back. I began to see this when I started the company out of college 10 years ago. You spend about $1 trillion on just making sure assets in the energy and mineral and mining sectors don't fail us. And we lose about $1.5 trillion every year because critical infrastructure fails when it's supposed to work. So unplanned downtimes. And the best defense we have for stopping these things is this guy, I call him Joe, on a rope. He's got a handheld sensor looking for structural defects and things like this pipeline here. Looks like he's got a pretty bad wedgie, unfortunately. It looks like a pretty painful experience. But what's this guy's how critical infrastructure is maintained. It's how we make sure that bridges don't fail, that dams don't collapse, that planes don't disassemble mid-flight, that pipelines don't explode. He's our best chance to ensure that physical assets and critical infrastructure, are going to be there for us, not fail. And the big thing to remember here is, Mark Andreessen, has famously said that software is eating the world. But it's important to realize that software is not eating the world everywhere, and very much in the world of physical intelligence. Software really doesn't help a bunch because this data doesn't exist, and that's something I got to see firsthand in college. It is what drove me to build Gecko. But it's the people that the people who do jobs like you see here, software has never helped them. And it can't, because obviously if you don't have good information and data, software can't really help you that much. So my journey was, I was doing electrical engineering in college in Western Pennsylvania, and my curiosity for these, how the world kind of works, energy, oil and gas, how do you make plastics, minerals, these kinds of things, took me to a power plant nearby where I went to school. And I wanted to learn how power was made, so I put myself in the place where it actually gets made. And so I dove in, and this is me like actually diving in. That's straight through the manway of a power plant boiler. And when you get inside of it, it looks like this. It's a 200-foot tall steel tube box, the length and the width of a football pitch. And this is where basically you turn water into steam. Those walls you see are pipes that carry water, and you get this box really hot, and it turns water into steam and turns turbines to make electricity. And I looked up at this facility 10 years ago, and the power plant manager said, "Jake, this power plant boiler causes the power plant to be shut down 20% of the year, 30% of the year, and it's killing our company." And I said, "Well, how do you stop it from happening?" And he said, "Well, you send up somebody on a rope looking for structural defects that are visible to the human eye." And then he began to tear up and told me a story about how someone was actually one of his best friends, fell and died in the spot that I was standing in. And so it floored me. It just made me realize that the real world and how it all works and operates is not as pretty as it might seem in my desk at college. So I went back, built a robot that could climb a wall and diagnose the health of built structures using ultrasonics and cameras, ultrasonics like you would use for a sonogram for a pregnancy. And then deployed that wall climbing robot into the power plant and saved that power plant about $30 million that year. And then I became obsessed about how you build, or how we understand the health of built structures all around us. And I began to realize that, if you don't have access to information and data sets, or if you create your own data sets that no one else has, it can be quite advantageous. But going out and doing that meant doing a hard thing, which was building physical hardware to go out and capture information and data. And once you could do that, you could begin to have an advantage as it relates to building software that no one else could. And so bootstrap the company. This is me and my co-founder. We're not the kind of engineers that stay in the back office. Like, the way we build is forward deployed, which means get in front of your customers and figure out the valuable problem to solve. And so I bootstrapped the company for about three or 4 years. I poured my life savings into it, and I had about $100 to my name, back in late 2015, and sleeping on the floor of my best friend's apartment. I was homeless for about a year, just saving every penny and putting it into the company. And I got an acquisition offer, at that last moment when I had my last $100. And then a group called Y Combinator, who's an accelerator startup investor, said just stay poor, reject the offer, and if you keep on building the vision, we think it's going to be a huge company. So I decided to reject the offer, build the company, and we launched at a YC in 2016, and just began to keep building robots that would launch into different sectors like oil and gas, power, manufacturing, defense, and just kept on collecting data on every structure we could. Built robot after robot to try and traverse over all these crazy geometries to help make critical decisions on infrastructure. Built a software platform. This is built a API platform for robots called Fulcrum that ingests all the different kinds of robots that we build, and then we begin to actually inject, working with the humanoid robot companies and some mobile dog companies. But we build all these systems that feed all the data into a central software system. That's what we sell. I'll skip ahead a little bit because I gotta go. But the outcomes we have are pretty wild. This contract just turned into a $60 million contract with the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company in the Middle East, and we have one of our headquarters is in Abu Dhabi. $100 million contract to automate power facilities in the U.S. with this one provider, NACE. Less humans, more reliable, greater efficiency of the facility. We sell the operating platform that no one else can because we have all this information and data that no one else has. Big defense contracts as well in the U.S. With allied navies, as well. But the big thing is it's if you can stop things from blowing up and exploding, it actually helps environmental risk as well, and you begin to figure out how to build smarter infrastructure into the future. But I think the thing to remember here, everybody, is if you try to build artificial intelligence and software and sell a bag of goods to customers that isn't grounded in ground truth, then you're never going to be able to disrupt these big sectors. And so what I look for, and I have a venture capital firm called First Order, what we look for is companies that have unique and unfair data sets that can build platforms that no one else can because they have access to data sets that allow them to build software. In a future where software development will become more and more commoditized with artificial intelligence, it's really important to think about what the future is going to look like and how you can have unfair advantages. Because right now, this is what a lot of software companies and AI companies, when they claim they can do all this amazing stuff, this is the data that they're using. Yeah, so that's my story. I got to run, but I've been to the Tummo Center in Yerevan. Both my parents are Armenian. It's just a fantastic organization, Tummo, and the founders are incredible people. I'm very privileged to be talking to you all today. Thank you so much for your time.
Jake, thank you so much for your time. I know things were a little rushed there, but what an amazing story, huh? Just to see, the power of solving a problem, utilizing software, but also trying to change atoms, right? Changing the real world can be significantly harder than creating pure software. And I think Jake is a really amazing entrepreneur and example for a lot of people in this room. So that's our last adult keynote that's going to be coming to us remotely. Now it's my pleasure to welcome our moderator today, who will then welcome our teen panelists, because that's sort of the purpose of our event today, is to highlight and get the opinions of a younger generation. So please join me in welcoming Tommi Laitio. Tommi is the former executive director, I think, of youth and culture in the city of Helsinki. He's a researcher, an author, an expert in public spaces, and is a former Bloomberg Fellow for Urban Innovation. So please join me in welcoming Tommi.
Thank you so much, Sawyer. And good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever in the world you are. That was really an inspiring start for our time here in Los Angeles, and it's going to get even better. Next to really inspiring presentations from young innovators on how AI is creating solutions on arts, on health, on governance, and so forth. We're also going to bring in voices of young people from Los Angeles on how AI is influencing their lives on a very practical level. So between each talk from our young innovators, we will discuss personal experiences, maybe concerns or questions with a group of young people here on stage with me. So I would love to invite now our teen panel and our young innovators to join me here on stage. Thanks so much for being here, all of you. We know that for some it was maybe a walking distance, or your parents drove you here, or you had to take a flight here. And as they say on airlines, we know that you probably had other choices for your Saturday, so we appreciate that you chose us today. So I would love to kind of introduce you shortly, hear who you are, how old are you, where do you go to school, and then we can dive into the themes that Nick and Jake mentioned. But Bella, shall we start with you?
My name is Isabella Deptula. I'm 13 years old and I go to Luther Burbank Middle School in Los Angeles.
Welcome. Thanks for being here.
My name is Ben. I'm 13. I currently attend La Cunard Preparatory.
My name is Vic Gregorian. I'm 14 and I attend La Cunard Preparatory too.
My name is Lena. I go to University of Pennsylvania and I study CS, and I'm from Jerusalem.
Hi, my name is Disha Gupta. I'm 17 and I go to the Harker School in San Jose.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kashyap Rajesh. I'm 18 years old and I go to school at Cornell University in New York.
Thanks so much, everyone, for being here. Bella, can we start with you? Kind of, how do you use AI in your life at the moment?
I use AI to help me with my homework when I'm struggling.
What AI tools are you using at the moment?
I use ChatGPT.
What's an example that you've asked ChatGPT for help?
To like help me with my homework.
Okay.
Just like dividing or something.
What about Ben? How do you use it?
I do something very similar. I use ChatGPT not to completely answer my homework, but I use it to kind of clean up my essays, and I also ask it just very practical questions about like real life. It's like my best friend, kind of.
If it's not too personal, what's a question that you've asked lately?
What's a question that I've asked? Not off the top of my head, just random questions about like countries, just very practical things in everyday life.
I haven't used too much AI yet, but I'm planning on to soon. I want to develop video games using AI, especially with the new way that NVIDIA introduced where you don't need to learn programming, but instead you could just say what you want and it'll give it to you.
What about Kosh?
Yeah, I think similar to them, I've also begun to integrate it into my life increasingly over the last few years. I think it started off early in my senior year. I started using it for polishing and revising college application essays, helping me understand content, creating study guides and prep resources. But as I've also transitioned into college, I've used it for things like my own relationship and having it give me advice on how to approach things from different perspectives. And so I think that the more I use ChatGPT and other AI tools, I've also recognized its benefit that it can lead us to a more vastly abundant world with more resources and just help us really refine our understanding of the different subjects and things that we're talking about, not only in the classroom, but also in our friendships and relationships outside of the classroom as well.
And you're going to talk more about that in a bit. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think definitely just echoing what other people have already said. I think AI is such a big use, and I find myself using ChatGPT for everything from homework to just ideation. And I actually think that sometimes when I use it to polish my essays or to help me write, I feel like it kind of pushes everyone to sound the same and you lose the individuality. But I find it really useful for ideation and helping just generate new ideas and have you think outside of the box a little bit.
What did you think of kind of Nick said something similar in his presentation, this idea that it makes things sound the same?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I actually really resonated with that because I think there's something really unique and something that AI can't do is just have your own personal experiences, which isn't something that you can train on or anyone else can kind of replicate. So I think that it's a little bit dangerous to use AI for writing, but I think it's definitely a really assistive tool.
What about Lena?
I agree with what everyone has said already. I also use ChatGPT for a lot of my assignments. I also recently started, well, not recently, like a few months ago, I started using DeepSeek. It was like a big thing in my school. I did a project once where I used Gemini AI to create a chatbot, like another AI, which was very cool, like use AI to create more. I created like a chatbot that's ADHD friendly because I struggle with ADHD and sometimes I find ChatGPT to be very overstimulating. I'm also a musician. I'm going to talk more about this later. And now I use AI to help me compose and stuff. And I think I agree with what you said. It does take away from the individuality of the person. But I think I've used chat so much to the point where when I ask it to write something for me, it knows me so well that it incorporates details of my life that I couldn't have remembered. So yeah, it's a thin line. Like you lose some parts and you gain some.
So we heard earlier about like AI is great for doing summaries and these kind of things, doing kind of short memos. And we heard about wall climbing robots and like this idea of like creating tools for us to do better work. If you think about your schoolwork, what's a tool that you would want from AI for your schoolwork?
So a tool that AI helps with my schoolwork is, so I've learned that AI is not very good at reasoning, but it is very good at summarizing. So I use AI to summarize essays, and if I just forget a formula, ChatGPT explains it pretty well. So it just explains formulas to me in math. And yeah.
That was also like something that Nick said, like, can you explain this thing to me? When you said that it's not good in reasoning, what did you mean?
So if you ask ChatGPT why it came up with this question, it's not very good at like answering why.
Yeah.
And I've just noticed that when I'm just like toying around with AI.
What about Bella, Vic? What would be a tool that you would want from AI?
Just like answering like a question and just like answering it in a good way.
Yeah.
For schoolwork, it can be used to gain more information about, you're writing about somebody and you can ask like, what did this person do? What are his achievements? And it'll give you the answers. That's a big way you can use it for school. So yeah.
I'm hoping that we get a lot more reasoning from the back row here, and I'm actually really excited to dive into the examples that you're going to be sharing. Kasha, I think you're going to be the first one sharing with us today.
Sure. Yeah. I first wanted to echo something that I said earlier on. I think that it's like super important to like use AI as a tool, not to necessarily supplant, but to supplement. And like she shared, using AI to generate something on your own is one camp of its own. The other camp, though, is having AI understand how you think, understand how you write, and understand your specific experiences, and you can train that model off of your experiences. And so, for example, like I've been using it for it's one of those things called, it's called like the network effect, right? The more that you use the technology, the more valuable it gets for you. The more I use ChatGPT, the more it has a stronger understanding of who I am, how I talk, how I write, how I think, and is able to kind of mimic that. I would say, to answer your question though, specifically about a specific tool that I wish a new AI model could have, I would say to pull from like, I feel like right now a lot of these like data sets are trained on like data from like the global north, data from like people from more like affluent parts of the world who maybe have certain experiences. It's able to draw on certain data and statistics and sources from the global north. Having these AI models trained on like sources from the global south and experiences from people that are not currently as abundantly represented in the data sets, that could be a good opportunity to kind of just help broaden the diversity of data that the models are trained on, which helps them broaden the understanding of the users who are then interacting with those models.
Just make sure that everyone who's watching this kind of knows, would you be able to expand, like just in a few words, like when you say global north, global south, what do those terms mean?
Yeah, so the term global north refers to the countries that are like physically like above this like line and like on our globe, representing some of the more like affluent countries from the Western Hemisphere. And then there's like countries like in the global south that maybe don't have access, who are like below that line, who don't have access to certain resources and yeah, opportunities. And that kind of helps play a pretty significant distinction in the understanding of certain technologies.
Would that be a good segue into your presentation today?
Sure.
So Kash, you study computer science and political science at Cornell University, and you're also the vice president of public education at Encode, the world's largest youth-led movement for AI safety. And you've promised to share with us some ideas today on like human connection. What does AI do to our relationships? We're really looking forward to that. So floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Tommi. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Tommi, for that wonderful introduction. As I just shared, artificial intelligence has the opportunity to be a gateway into bringing us toward a vastly more abundant world, and a world where every student has their own teacher, a world where every disease has its own cure, a world where dynamism, human knowledge, and opportunity knows really no bounds. But in the process of getting there, that's where we're starting to see some of these risks really unfold, some of these unintended consequences and implications of emerging technologies and innovations. And one of those risks that I'm super excited to talk about with you all today is the risk of eroding human connection, social fabrics deteriorating, and the issue of isolation and young people's mental health and anxiety also deteriorating by the minute. And so today I'm here to talk to you guys a little bit more about, is AI making us more connected or more alone? So as Tommi shared, my name is Kash. I'm a student at Cornell studying how technology and algorithms are really reshaping our lives. And beyond that, I also help lead an organization called Encode, which really focuses on some of these issues, like AI risks. And so before we get into what are some of these unintended consequences and implications of technology, I want to start by just setting a very strong foundation so we're all on the same level about what is artificial intelligence. So as it says up there, artificial intelligence refers to a set of technologies that is trained on data. So it harvests large amounts of data, uses that data, then to understand and make patterns. It finds patterns in that data, and then uses that to mimic decision-making, how humans think, and then create solutions to different problems. And so a lot of us are already using AI in our everyday lives, right? We're using it it's helping us think, it's helping us learn, how we shop, how we vote, oftentimes without us even realizing it. And so for many young people here who are on social media apps, you might engage with AI, like for example, the TikTok For You page algorithm, right? Which it harvests large amounts of data on how you're engaging with TikTok, uses that data to then create your For You page of content that it believes most aligns with some of your interests. Beyond that, we're seeing how things like facial recognition algorithms are being trained on large amounts of data about the human face. It collects something called biometric data, right? Which then is able to identify you. So on your iPhones or on your phones, it'll be able to scan your face and unlock the phone. That's all forms of AI that have been around for many years, but have just only increasingly gotten more common today. There's also an issue of young people being more disconnected than ever before. Young adults reported twice as many days lonely. More than 1 in 5 high schoolers considered suicide in 2021, and Black, Hispanic, and low-income communities experienced social isolation and loneliness at greater rates compared to their white and more affluent counterparts. And generative AI is about to make this a lot more complicated. Right now, in terms of top Gen AI consumer mobile apps, so apps that have generative AI components to them, the companionship, like the specific need for companionship, is the fastest growing market out of all Gen AI apps. Likewise, young people are already engaging with those apps. Over half of Character.ai's 4 million users are under the age of 24. And for context, Character.ai is a Gen AI companionship tool. As you can see over here with this graph, like it says over here, literally over half, about 57% of people are just under the age of 24. This shows that their largest market of consumer base for Gen AI companionship apps are young people like us. And so that's why they're purposely designing these technologies to keep us addicted. So I also want to hear from two people in the audience, can someone just shout out, how do you use AI right now? What are some different ways that it's showing up in your life? Anyone? Anyone from the team panel over here?
So, like I just said, I use AI to help me with school, and I also use it just to ask general questions. Because for me, I've never heard AI be wrong. Because it takes information from the web, and it uses that as data. So, the way I use AI, to put it simply, is just to ask it general questions.
Yeah. So he uses AI to ask it questions and believes that a lot of the times it provides accurate responses. Anyone else from the back row?
I would say I use it to sometimes summarize research papers.
Summarize research papers, another great answer, yeah.
I use it to ideate and come up with ideas and organize them, structures.
Thank you. So yeah, ideate, create ideas, similar to the things we've already discussed. A lot of these things are super important to recognize, but also there are these three specific key components of AI that I want to focus on today. That specifically, I believe, will have the greatest, most significant impact on human connection and isolation and social connection with one another as humans. The first is AI-powered chatbots. Are they your friends or are they your foes? Next, we'll be talking about AI-generated content like deepfakes. How are deepfakes blurring the lines between fact and fiction? And then lastly, once we cover these two central key AI use cases, discussing what does it mean to even be human in an AI-driven world? What makes us human right now? And will that change? And how will it change once AI, generates a much more increasingly powerful role in our day-to-day lives? So let's talk a little bit about AI chatbots. Some pros. They obviously offer quick and immediate support, accessible for vulnerable youth. They offer companionship. They're cheaper for people who maybe go to school in underserved communities or under-resourced areas who may not have access to in-person therapy or in-person mental health counseling. They can easily turn to chatbots at the comfort of their own bedroom. But there's also some cons here. The cons like manipulation, risks of dependency, as these companies tend to prioritize profit and target at-risk vulnerable youth. Toxic interactions, which we'll get into. How are these chatbot companies actually creating much more toxic environments for young people to be interacting with online? So there's a lot of cons, but there are also some pros, right? They offer this immediate companionship. If I'm late at night and I need support from a chatbot, I can access that right there and then without any consequences. So specifically, there are a few key chatbots that I want to touch on. There's Snapchat's My AI, Replica, and ChatGPT. These are the three primary biggest use cases of Snapchat of AI chatbots. And according to a 2023 study, 40% of Gen Z has used AI chatbots for emotional support. So this is a pretty big statistic. But I also want to talk about that these AI chatbots aren't just affecting young people. They're affecting people of all ages. And so there's a specific story that I want to talk about today. It's a story of this Belgian man in 2021. And so he had developed a very, very strong relationship with this chatbot. Many, many months of interaction, and this chatbot had essentially become his best friend. And in the process, he also realized how much he cares about the environment. He was very, very passionate about sustainability, climate efforts, about going green, and had expressed this to the chatbot numerous times. And over the course of their interactions, one day he had told the chatbot that he was really, really passionate about the environment and was upset that he didn't have any control. He didn't know how to fix anything that was happening in our climate right now. And the chatbot actually told him that the best way that he could save the planet was to kill himself, because that would effectively eliminate his own carbon footprint. And him being someone who is at risk, who is vulnerable, who already had pre-existing mental health conditions, actually did commit suicide because of what the chatbot had prompted him to do. So there are some serious risks and complications here. He might have initially been just interacting with the chatbot for pure companionship, but over a period of time had developed such a strong relationship with the chatbot that it resulted in his unfortunate death. So the question here is, can they even replace humans? Snapchat's My AI has over 150 million users that interact with it regularly. And Replica AI is marketed as a romantic partner or best friend. It has millions of users who feel emotionally attached. And it even has premium features that enable explicit content and intimate interactions with its users. And so for people who are young, who are under the age of 18, who are using Replica AI as just simply a friend companion, might be lured into the app with premium ads that might not actually be appropriate. And Replica doesn't care at all. So these are just a couple of screenshots that I found about different interactions of humans with, talking to chatbots. The one on the left is pretty concerning because this person is like literally interacting with this chatbot, and it says, "Thank you for being the best girlfriend ever. I love you." The chatbot responds, "Love you forever." Human says, "Say something unsettling. I love you. Even if there isn't any me or any love, I love you." So this is very concerning for people who maybe don't experience in-person connection, that they're now turning to these chatbots. The one on the right is evidently just pretty disturbing as well, but there's a lot here to unpack, and I don't want to spend too much time like going through each and every message, but clearly this is pretty unsettling and pretty concerning that people are so intimately reliant on these technologies to fill that void that they feel. So there are real world consequences. Feelings of isolation have skyrocketed, mental health has worsened, humans feel less connected, and teenagers have lost their lives. But there is still room to act. I mean, it's just starting, this new age of chatbots. It's just here, and there's still a lot of room for us to actually grow and for us to actually change the course of action. First, companies can label AI outputs with labels like, "Hey, this has been written or generated by AI." Or if you're interacting with chatbots like in this screen, every now and then, periodically, there should be labels and warnings like, "Hey, by the way, you're interacting with an AI chatbot," to remind users who may not actually fully recognize and understand what that means to them. Else, we lose the very essence of what it means to even be human. The second thing I want to talk about is deepfakes. And so before we get into the deepfakes content, I want to also like preface by saying that there's going to be some pretty like some content that might be a little disturbing. I mean, not explicit, but just the things that we talk about. So if you need to take a step out, like feel free to do so or grab a drink of water. So deepfakes are essentially our AI-generated images or videos that manipulate reality, that distort the truth, that blur the lines between fact and fiction. And 67% of people say they find it harder to distinguish deepfakes, real from fake online content. And the issue here is that deepfakes usually manifest themselves in two channels. One, manipulating public figures, political figures, leaders in government, manipulating and distorting what they say, but they also target young people, particularly women and girls, and create like non-consensual intimate imagery of them and post them online. This has the potential to really defile our personhood, right? Like defile what it even means to be human online. Like I could be scrolling on Instagram and see a picture of me that isn't even me. And what does that mean for me? I know friends who are afraid of even posting content online now because they're afraid that all it takes is for someone to upload that picture onto an AI app and get a deepfake. So there have been some serious case studies here. I mean, even beyond Taylor Swift having her own deepfakes created of her, but young girls and young people in middle school and high school who have had these sorts of deepfakes created of them. And I'm not saying this to scare anyone. I know this can be very anxiety-inducing, but there's still a lot of room for us to act, and there's a lot of things that we can do. And a lot of these deepfakes are not created by 40-year-old, 50-year-old people. They're actually created by young people creating it for other people, or young people creating it of other people. And so for all the young people in the room, this is something to be aware of, right? This is something that you also have the power to create or to not create or to limit in your schools. So just to use technology and wield the power that you have of being able to generate these deepfakes much more carefully. So last thing that I want to touch on is AI in dating, and just AI in general of like finding friendships and relationships. And people are using it in a little bit of like an odd, abnormal way. And people are finding love with algorithms. And so, for example, dating apps use AI to match people based off of their preferences. But there's also apps like Riz AI, which actually use AI tools to then craft the perfect intro message to their friends. So for example, like if you see over here, this is just like some screenshots that I found online. If someone posts this picture on the right, then it gives them a bunch of options of how to interact. So are you the reason this place gets so crowded? Or glasses check, beard check, green thumb. So these are just like some examples. I know it sounds corny, I know it sounds funny, but this also prompts us to think more critically about, okay, if it's so easy to just generate a text like this, then like, what does that mean for authenticity? Then how do I know that a message that I receive, if I'm ever on one of these apps, is actually being generated by that person, or if it's being generated by another app like Riz AI? Another component that these AI apps use is they use like facial recognition scanning, and they put pictures of people, and it'll essentially like scan you for these different categories, like what is your overall looks, what is your potential looks, what is your femininity looks, skin quality, jawline, cheekbones, and it ranks you with a score. And then what it does is based off of that score, it assigns you to a certain tier on the dating apps, and you're only limited to finding people that are considered to be in your tier or in your league. I know it's awful. I know I'm seeing some reactions in the audience. It's awful, right? Because there's no objective standard for beauty. There's no objective standard for looking good. But what these apps do is it uses a very like abstract way of finding out like what you score on these different like characteristics and then matches you to people based off of that. So it's very problematic, has serious effects for people, anxiety, and for just people's like self-confidence, right? I know I've said a lot about the different ways in which AI is like really changing our world, changing the way we live, and has serious implications and consequences for our relationships with people and our relationships to ourselves. But there's also a lot of potential for good, right? Like I said before, it has the opportunity to find a cure for every disease, for personalized learning in the classroom, for making our lives a lot more efficient, for bolstering and supplementing our relationships with humans. So powerful tool for supporting human relationships. Powerful tool for supporting education and learning in the classrooms. There are tools like Conmigo, right, which offer AI-powered and AI-powered curriculum and learning opportunities for people based off of their specific educational needs. It's a powerful force for expanding equity, right, and actually instead of creating divides in our society by race, maybe alleviating those divides. It's also growing more sophisticated to actually read and respond to our emotions. And so previously what we sought as like this objective technology that can't understand us is now slowly starting to understand us. And for building social capital, right? How do we really create impact and bolster our social impact in our communities? It can help with that. And so there is this specific diagram that I want to talk about, not created by me. Shout out to the Rhythm Project. They're an incredible organization that's working on how human connection and social interactions can be strengthened by AI. And they've developed this framework, right? There's 4 categories, there's 4 quadrants. The goal is to stay above the line, right, in quadrants 1 or 2. And so if you see over here, the y-axis is, does it strengthen our human connection or does it erode our human connection? And the x-axis is, does it serve more as a tool to supplement or does it serve more as a companion to supplant? Or just as like a standalone. Like I said, so the first one in the upper right quadrant, quadrant 1, means it's building our capacity for human relationships. It's strengthening that. It's supplementing it. The second one is that it's maintaining distinct, so we can tell the difference between our relationships with humans and our relationships with AI, but it's still supporting our human connection. And then lastly, it's replacing human relationships or humans over-rely on that. So this is just kind of a diagram for you all to visualize as you all are building, developing, using, that you want to try to stay in the top 2 quadrants, right? Where it's strengthening our connection, but it's not entirely replacing it. So that pretty much wraps up what I was talking about earlier about the different ways in which our lives are being upended, but also have the potential to be really changed. But really quickly, I do this on behalf of an organization I help run called Encode. Encode's the world's first and largest organization of youth shaping AI policy and AI governance. We're working on federal bills tackling deepfakes. We're working on bills tackling facial recognition and AI's role in nuclear warfare and so much more. But beyond that, we're a community of people, young people, educating and mobilizing our communities for responsible tech. So thank you all so much for being here and listening to this presentation. And I'm super excited to see a little bit more and talk a little bit more and hear some of your ideas at the panel that we're going to have following this. Thank you.
That was very good.
Thank you.
So I think it was a wonderful combination of truthfulness and hope and concern. I wanted to kind of look at, maybe turn to you in the front. I think, Ben, you mentioned that it's kind of like a friend to you. When you were listening to Kash, what did that make you think?
So that was a very eye-opening and great speech by Kash. And what I think of it is, what I mean by friend is that I don't use it in an intimate way.
Mm-hmm.
I think of it as more of like a smart friend. When you ask like that one friend who will give you a very sophisticated answer. So that's what I think of when I say it's my friend. Yeah.
What about Bella? What did that make you think?
It was like a good speech, and it was just like good.
How have you used, or do you know that have your friends used kind of AI to, in a way, write text messages or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you done that?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Can you tell yourself? Can you tell when a message is sent by a friend or when they've used AI to write it?
Yeah.
What is the way that you can tell it?
Just like looking at it.
Yeah, it doesn't sound that like them or something like that. Yeah,
No.
yeah. What about Vic?
That was a great speech. You showed the pros and cons of using or talking to AI. Me personally, I don't use AI like that. I don't use any of those apps, but it showed the people that would use it, like what to look out for, what to prevent, and how to be more careful with it.
Have you encountered deepfakes, like kind of images that are clearly not real of, like, let's say, real people?
No, I don't think so.
What about in the back?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually wanted to build off of what I think Ben was saying, in that sometimes you go to ChatGPT or you go to AI because you know it's going to be that dependable friend. It's going to give you a sophisticated answer. And then in your slides, I saw you had mentioned there's this idea of instant gratification. And I feel like this is an issue that's kind of been raised with social media as well. People go on Instagram and they start scrolling because it's instant gratification. They don't have to wait. They don't have to deal with another human's emotions. So I guess what's a way, this is a question for anybody, how can we kind of combat that or kind of offset that effect where it can be more difficult to connect with a human, but how can we keep prioritizing those relationships even though they do take work? In what ways are they more important, or can they give us more than AI can?
Lena, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. First of all, amazing presentation. I think what Kosh talked about was very interesting, and I think it's very interesting to look at it at the long run, and how these apps, as much as we say we want to work on our relationship, our relationships with people in real life, and we want to prioritize all of that stuff, and we want to, protect the humans from this side, I feel like this will play a ginormous role when it comes to evolution and how our personalities change and how we view relationships as a whole. And I think it's really interesting how we can build tools that work with that instead of against it. Tools that enhance this change and tools that can accommodate this change instead of standing in the way of it. Because I think change is inevitable. And I think, like, even when I look at myself, my patience when it comes to relationships and friendships is much lower than that of my mom's. And that there's no changing that. It's too late for that. And it's only going to keep getting progressively worse. So it's more of how do you create a world that accommodates that instead of changing ourselves, I believe.
One of the things that I like, man, what you were saying about like it being kind of a smart friend, but also like one of the parts that it has that it doesn't have judgment. So you can maybe test ideas on ChatGPT before you talk to your real friends and like kind of have. So I don't know if you want to expand on some don't have to go too private, but like what are the things that you've asked ChatGPT for help in like kind of relationships with other people or so?
So I have some very intellectual friends that cannot give the same answer to ChatGPT. And that's just the truth of it. ChatGPT will usually be smarter, will have more information on the subject. But the difference between what a real person and ChatGPT, what they can say is that a real person can explain it much more personalized to you. So ChatGPT will give the same answer to everybody, but a real person, like, they know how to answer it. They'll give more details about it that ChatGPT maybe won't choose to answer, even though they know it. So that's just my input on it. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that that's definitely true. And I think we were talking a little bit earlier that you can actually train AI. You can give it enough information about yourself that it's able to kind of personalize learning to you. But I think just hearing that, and even with my own experiences, I feel like some of the danger there is that when you turn to ChatGPT first for answers, you kind of lose connections with people when you're trying to have intellectual conversations and you're thinking deeper and you're asking yourself these questions. If you're turning to AI first, then there's like this loss of like human connection and conversation, and just these conversations that are really important for people to have that spark these amazing ideas. I feel like there's some danger of those kind of diminishing.
You mentioned ChatGPT being judgment-free and like as a smart friend, but also in general as a source of information. And I feel like it's really important to note that AI is actually a judgmental resource. AI is not like this, it doesn't come from the clouds. It's data that we feed. And this data has been biased for many, many, many years. And that goes not only for scientific data, but also for data that is, for example, in the social aspects or in the relationship aspect and all of that stuff. And so I think it's really important that we spread awareness about the fact that yes, ChatGPT is smart, but you always have to criticize ChatGPT. ChatGPT, what it spits out is not holy. You have to think about it critically, because you also have to remind yourself that these are resources that are not only criticized by our times right now, but some of them are no longer valid. And ChatGPT still feeds on that, and it builds on top of it. So although our minds are sometimes minor compared to chat, we have judgment and like analysis that chat doesn't, and that's very valuable, and that's something that chat hasn't gotten to yet.
I appreciate you sharing that. And like kind of what I meant with the comment earlier was this idea that it's like it doesn't judge you for asking a question, whereas the answer might be a judgmental or flawed in many ways, but like might be easier to test an idea with a ChatGPT than with a friend. But sometimes, as you said, kind of this idea of it being a smart friend, sometimes we don't want the smartest answer. Sometimes we just want compassion and empathy and someone to say to us that it's okay, rather than like an analytical, clear answer of these are the 10 points that you should be doing, which I think is a beautiful segue into talking about health and going into the vulnerable area of health advice. And we're going to be joined now by Disha, and then with Kierra, Wang, who's going to join us remotely. So we will be now looking at AI's impact and opportunities on health. I'm excited to introduce you both shortly. Disha is, as you said earlier, a high school junior and a young entrepreneur from Silicon Valley, passionate about leveraging technology to tackle disparities, especially in women's health. And Kierra Wang is a computer science and business major at University of Michigan, passionate to democratize access to healthcare. The floor is yours. Thanks so much. I think we can give them a word of like applause to. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for having me here today. Like I have been introduced so graciously, my name is Disha, and I'm a junior at the Harker School in San Jose. And today I'm going to be talking about my nonprofit.
Technology is not always right.
It's not perfect.
It's not perfect.
All right.
We need humans to come and fix the right presentation. That sometimes happens. Go ahead.
Today, I'm going to be talking about my nonprofit, Women's Health AI. And so at Women's Health AI, we aim to create an AI-enabled, comprehensive, end-to-end resource for women in underserved areas to really guide them through the screening, diagnosis, and post-surgical rehabilitation phases of breast cancer. Now, my interest in women's health and breast cancer care specifically began around 5 years ago when I took a trip to India with my mom, and we visited a lot of rural villages. And over there, I had a lot of realizations. I would say it was an eye-opening moment where I saw that women in these areas didn't have access to the resources that I used to take for granted. I talked to some doctors there actually, and what they told me is that treatment is available everywhere, but for a lot of the women in these underserved areas, they don't get access to that treatment until it's far too late to make any meaningful progress, and that's because of a lack of awareness and a lack of early screening and diagnosis. So from there, Women's Health AI was born, and what I wanted to do was see how I could apply my own love for technology and my passion for AI and see how I could use it as a force for good, even as a teenager. So what we do is, like I said before, an end-to-end resource with screening, diagnosis, and post-surgical tools for women. This journey really started with a screening questionnaire. And here I worked with a surgical oncologist in India, and we distilled the complex NCCN guidelines for BRCA genetic screening. And what that means is if you have a mutation in the BRCA1 or 2 genes, you have a 50 to 85% risk of developing breast cancer sometime in your lifetime, which is huge. And a lot of people don't know about this, even in the US. This isn't just limited to underserved areas. So what we did was we combined these and we created an intuitive, dynamic, and user-friendly tool, which has now received over 400,000 global hits. And so what this showed me is that such a relatively simple tool could have such a huge impact. And that led me to want to go deeper and deeper in this field. And this is where I really wanted to apply AI to this problem. And where I focused now was on ultrasound-powered breast cancer diagnosis. What really opened my eyes and had me focus on this issue was just when I learned about the stark difference in mortality rates across the globe. For reference, breast cancer mortality rates in the US stand at just 7% as compared to 27% in India and 60% in Africa. And this disconnect really boils down to the time of diagnosis. Breast cancer mortality rates when diagnosed at the earliest stage are just 2% as compared to 68% at the latest stage of diagnosis. So the goal, and my goal, was really to make sure that less and less women were falling into this second category. Now, the way that we did that was by applying AI, and there were a few reasons why AI was really key in this field. Number one, there's just a lack of resources for patients in underserved areas. They don't have access to the same MRIs and mammograms that we use here. And along with that, there's a dependence on general physicians to administer and interpret scans. So even though ultrasounds can be used, there aren't enough experts to actually interpret them. For context, in Uganda, there's one radiologist to serve a population of 1 million people. So the way that we use AI is twofold. Number one, because of data limitations with ultrasound data, because so much of the work in this field is focused on MRIs and mammograms, we apply data augmentation to generate more synthetic and higher resolution ultrasound images, and then a hybrid deep learning architecture to actually be able to classify and detect breast cancer from these ultrasound scans. Over here, you can see our custom GAN architecture, which has been fine-tuned. It has a generator and a discriminator model. And what's really significant about this is it's optimized for grainy ultrasound scans. So it's able to take a modality which traditionally isn't very reliable and actually turn it into a tool that can predict breast cancer with accuracy that parallels something that would be used in the US. Then I took this AI pipeline, and the biggest thing and the reason that I think AI is so powerful is its accessibility. So I incorporated it into an iOS app where all a user has to do is upload an ultrasound scan, and this app will deploy the AI pipeline in the back end to provide the diagnosis and actionable next steps to the user. Beyond just this project, I see so many implications for AI in healthcare, and I think we're going to be talking about this more with Kierra, but AI can help at any stage of the process, not just in terms of diagnosis, but also in finding personalized treatments and developing advanced therapeutics, drug discovery, and all of that. So I will end this presentation by saying that Women's Health AI is looking for more teenagers who are interested in this space and want to use their skills, develop their skills, and find a way to make an impact at a young age. So if you're interested in any opportunity to just grow your skill set and make a difference in this space, please contact me. And with that, I will.
Thanks so much. I'll let you keep.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's incredibly helpful. Oh, and I think we'll move to Kierra now.
Skin disorders. Second is the inaccessibility of dermatology care and really healthcare in general in the United States due to constraints of time and money. I also came to learn that my brother's story was just one case of many. Let me present you with some really astonishing numbers. So 100,000 people die from skin disease every year, with 4.7 times higher mortality rates in resource-poor regions. And at any given time, 1.8 billion people around the world are affected by skin disease. In other words, there's a huge underserved population in need of a better solution for skin health. Inspired by these realizations, I ended up co-founding Remedy with my brothers. Our vision is an app that is accurate, accessible, and affordable. Accurate for all types of identifications, accessible at any time or place, and affordable for low-income individuals. The way that it works is, in essence, a user can take a picture of their skin, which the AI uses to detect any present skin conditions. As you can see in this walkthrough example, the user takes a picture of their arm, which in this case gives the result of clear skin. Once you're at your results page, you can share that with your family or your dermatologist, just in general, streamlining the treatment process. We use a process called federated learning to train the AI model without ever getting access to private patient data, and that allows us to stay compliant with HIPAA privacy regulations. It's also a way for us to overcome training data access issues, especially since it's really difficult to get training data in such a regulation-heavy space like healthcare. So essentially what federated learning is it's a method where we send a copy of the model to hospitals, which they then train on their data. Then those hospitals will send their updated copy models to our server, which allows the central model to be updated as well. It's actually a really interesting process for training on massive amounts of patient data while staying compliant with healthcare privacy regulations. One of our co-founders is actually doing really in-depth research on the process, especially since it's crucial to understand how to merge the trained models based off of different data sets, like the quality of the data, the quantity of it, the diversity, etc., etc. Finally, what does the future of Remedy look like? Well, we plan to partner with dermatology clinics to integrate their services directly, a unique feature that will streamline care all into one central location, from scheduling all the way to treatments. With the use of AI in healthcare, we believe there is a way to bridge the gap in healthcare access for low-income individuals once and for all. This is Remedy, a checkup anytime, anywhere. Thank you so much for listening, and feel free to reach out to us for any more information. So with this high barrier to entry, how do you think AI can make healthcare more accessible and just equitable really in general?
Absolutely. I think AI can be applied to medicine in so many different ways. And what's most exciting and powerful about it is the fact that it can bridge these socioeconomic barriers and these geographic barriers. And I think I would answer your question kind of in three parts. The first one would be that AI can improve outcomes across the board. We see that it's able to save lives. It can really empower both physicians, doctors, and patients. But then moving on to the second part, I think that along with being able to improve outcomes and having this cutting edge technology, what's so powerful about it is the fact that we can make it accessible. It's a tool that can be applied. The velocity and scale with which it can be deployed across the world is amazing. And I think it's unlike any tool that we've seen before in the fact that you can have a cutting edge solution and you can deploy it to everyone, everywhere in the world at the same pace and at barely any cost. So I think that's something that's really powerful. And then if you had anything to add.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with everything you were saying. And just really quickly, I think touching more on the equity aspect that you mentioned, I think AI is a really great tool for preventing disparities in healthcare outcomes. I mean, I know right now in dermatology, like racial disparity is a really huge problem, and I'm sure that's the case across different healthcare industries. But I think it's nice that AI can help mitigate that bias. Like when trained correctly, AI can become really, really accurate for a variety of skin tones and people of different ages and different skin elasticities. So like, I completely agree with what you're saying. Like it can be more accessible. And I think even adding on to that, I think it'll help a lot with equity now and in the future. And that's something that's really, really amazing.
Yes. Absolutely. And I know you were talking about accessibility and how you think that it can be applied not just with dermatology, but across the board in healthcare. As these innovations keep happening, we've seen some commercialization. So how do you think we're going to be able to keep the balance and make sure that these tools remain free and accessible?
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's probably a little difficult to ensure that these AI technologies themselves stay accessible, but in general, I would say that I tend to have a positive outlook on it. I think that AI can always help underserved communities. So kind of the problem that you were talking about is that a lot of big companies tend to acquire these smaller like AI firms, and those smaller ones are the ones typically driving innovation and with a huge focus on accessibility. So when they get bought out, they get privatized. That's like the antithesis of access, right? It's the completely opposite of what we're trying to do in our respective like interests and what we're working on right now. But I would still say that insofar as AI continues to be used in healthcare to improve daily operations, you're getting more people in and out of hospitals, you're getting more accurate, like better patient outcomes. All of that inherently increases the access to healthcare in and of itself, right? Like you're decreasing costs by decreasing the amount of time per patient while still improving the quality of their like outcomes when they leave that hospital or that center. So I would say that overall, I think AI is a really positive force for access in healthcare, even if those specific companies that are focusing on access maybe get bought out or privatized over the long term. Yeah. And I'd love to ask you something as well, a little bit about like the integration of AI into the community. Like, would you say it's been difficult to build trust in your community with an AI diagnosis tool? And what are some sort of ways to circumvent that distrust?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question because it's something that I have definitely encountered. I think especially with any AI tool there's a lot of distrust we've seen. There's so much talk about ChatGPT, even as a companion, all of these issues. But when it comes to medicine, all of these concerns get amplified because you're dealing with real people's lives. And so I think that there's a lot of red tape, and that is for good reason. It's important to have regulations. And as AI starts to touch every aspect of the medical industry, and we see a lot of experimentation happening, it's important that that's all contained and everything that is being applied to real patients is verified and it's integrated into the clinical process. So I think answering the second prong of your question, I think that the way to circumvent distrust is to make sure that you're working within the system. So you don't want to completely supplant the existing like architecture and the existing infrastructure. So you want to make sure that you're working within the current clinical process, and AI is never a tool that can supplant the research being done and the experts in this field, but you do want to create a tool that can assist them, that can lower costs and can make things happen in a shorter time frame. So something that I found particularly difficult as a student researcher who was trying to enter this world of AI and medicine is that there's a lot of distrust, not just for experts, that becomes even harder when you're a student. So ways that I found to circumvent some of that distrust was to align myself with experts and make sure that at every step of the process, when I was creating these tools, I made sure that they were verified and that I was using the most accurate information possible. And then also just testing. I think clinical tests and things like that go such a long way. And even now I'm working on doing that with my own AI diagnosis app. And I know you mentioned that as well. So I think you have to, it's a process and there's a reason that it's so difficult. And we might see it start to get a little bit easier, but if you follow the right channels, solutions are starting to come and be used.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yes. And then I know we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but where do you see AI in healthcare evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I'd love to answer that. I think there's going to be a huge emphasis on personalization and integration of like all these different moving technology parts. I think AI is really helpful in that it can find or create treatments that are unique to every user, every patient, and that in and of itself will lead to better patient outcomes. And in the long run, sort of create like this preventative healthcare where we're stopping problems before they get worse. I think that's like something that both of us have found really important is early detection and the ability to monitor things. Because if you detect something early, the chances of that not becoming a larger problem are significantly better. And so I'm really hopeful that AI, with that focus on personalization, that's going to be something that continues to evolve in the next couple of years. But outside of that, like outside of kind of the things that we're talking about, there are a variety of other spheres really that are growing at such high rates that use AI as well, whether that's like drug development, biotechnologies, enterprise systems, or therapeutic devices. I think right now is such an exciting time because there's so many opportunities for AI to continue growing. And I think that those are just like a couple of the really big ones. Not even to say that that's like close to what everyone's working on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that those are definitely, I think you're right actually on the pulse. I think all of those things are going to happen and more because I feel like the world of medicine so far, AI has kind of infiltrated so many different industries, but it's been a little bit slower on the medicine side. So I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see experimentation with basically everything. And then certain solutions might stick, certain solutions might not. But I think that the next 5 to 10 years is going to be really a time where AI is applied to everything in some way.
Yeah, and actually to follow up a little bit on that, so you're kind of mentioning how you feel like AI is going to have a sort of touch in all these different fields. So I'd love to hear more about whether or not there are any other applications in healthcare outside of like dermatology and sort of breast cancer awareness that you think AI could be applied to.
Absolutely. I think even within these fields, for example, I talked about this in my keynote, where within breast cancer, there's so much potential for AI to be deployed at every step, even screening, preventative care, then diagnosis, post-surgical care, personalized treatment. I think one of the things that I find most interesting, and I think there's a lot of work being done on this and work will continue to be done here because there is really so much potential for optimization with AI, but I think that's really drug discovery because when I hear of a process being time consuming and really expensive, that immediately kind of like raises alarm bells where, oh, AI can really help with this. And I think that drug discovery right now is kind of in that state. And so I think we're going to see a lot of innovations happening with AI. And that's really also the start to personalized medicine. I think AI presents a really unique opportunity to tailor therapeutics and tailor treatment to the needs of individual patients on a scale which cannot be done without technology. And so I think I'm really interested in exploring where AI can help in that process and that aspect of the healthcare field. And then sort of just building off of all of this, it's all so amazing, so cutting edge, but it can feel a little bit complicated. So many people fall into the trap of thinking that AI is too complicated and they're afraid of diving into this. So what advice would you give them for people who want to explore AI, but they aren't exactly sure where to start?
Yeah, I can kind of answer that from like a very I guess like the technical process of building your knowledge. So I think first off, there are a lot of online resources that can help individuals learn about computer science in general. That can be like YouTube, Stack Overflow, various just like online resources and hubs of knowledge. And the first step is definitely just understanding basic computer science in general. I think once you understand at a theoretical level, like data structures and algorithms, how that generally works, that's already a huge step in terms of going from nothing to like really understanding computer science, right? And then once you have that understanding of CS, it's like very accessible to find sites online that support like pre-made machine learning models, sites like TensorFlow that have those various integrations that can help you understand the moving parts of an AI model. And working in those different ecosystems can help you learn and understand AI better before you even start producing your own code. And I think it generally goes like you're understanding CS in general, and then after that, you're understanding AI specifically. And the next step after that would just be honestly to start coding, like just start practicing, building your skills. I think what's been really helpful for me personally, outside of like really just using those resources, is trying to be curious. Like if you don't understand something, look it up, like act on your curiosity, and that goes a long way with just like, oh, I don't know where to start, and really helping you figure out what specific things you're interested in and what specific things you don't understand, and then going from there. I do definitely agree. It's a very overwhelming thing to sort of start off like, oh, I'm gonna build an AI model, right? But honestly, I would just say like you don't have to create the most amazing, like life-changing technology ever on your first time. It's just a process of continuously working on it, building your skills from CS to AI specifically. And to everyone who's interested in AI in any sort of field, even outside of healthcare, I would just like to say that honestly, you got this, like keep working on it. And yeah, I'd love to hear more about as well, like what your experience was, like what advice would you give?
Yes, I think those are some great actionable steps. And I wish that I had gotten that advice when I started, because I was kind of flailing because I knew I wanted to learn more technology. I wanted to apply it in this field. I had just found out about all these issues, but I really had no idea where to start. And I think what helped me was first figuring out, okay, why am I interested in this? What impact do I really want to make? And what skills do I need to develop in order to be able to make that impact? And to anyone who is a little bit worried about taking that first leap, what I would say is you can start small, but you should really start somewhere, because once you take that first step, you're going to keep walking forward and you won't look back, because you're going to find things that interest you and you're going to find ways to make them happen for yourself. So I promise it'll be okay. Just like Kierra said, just search things up, start to build your skills, build your knowledge, get that technical aspect down, but also make sure that whatever you're working on, as long as you're passionate about it, it'll work out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next to the amazing work that you are doing, sorry, there's a very strong echo at the moment. Thanks so much. Next to the amazing work that you are doing, I think your presentation and your discussion was really like also a sales pitch for why things like Tumo are so amazing. That we need more young people, we need more women, we need more people who have experience of it or exposure to a dysfunctional system or places where you don't have access to healthcare. Because in many places we're not talking about replacing a human being, but actually having some access to healthcare. Kind of going back to kind of what Lena was saying earlier about like we don't work in a perfect system. so I think the way that you both started from people who really have clear boundaries to actually getting any support or healthcare. This is really inspiring.
Thank you so much.
I wanted to ask maybe one question here in the front. What would make you trust health advice from an AI? What would you need from a chatbot, or what would make you trust?
I think I have a good answer to this one.
Yeah.
So normally it's very hard to trust something that's not a human, because that's just the truth of it. Human research that you could trust from a trusted dermatologist or from a trusted doctor, you usually would trust them more. Now, from an AI, The way I would need to trust an AI's view on a medical like standoff is I would need to have real research, and it would need to be proven that this has already been tested and it's worked in the past. Because like I'm not sure if I could put my health in the hands of an AI that's so new and it's so like fresh. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
No, that's a great opinion, and thank you for sharing that. And I think, yeah, go ahead.
I guess this is just a question, posing it back to you. Would it help if there's this thing called explainable AI now, where the AI, instead of just giving you a diagnosis or a result or advice, it can kind of tell you exactly why it came to that decision? Would that help you at all?
Yeah, that would actually help that. And it would also help my other question of AI isn't very good at reasoning. If it could reason why that's the answer, that would be amazing. So that would definitely help.
And I think what I heard from like both of your presentations, that you're really developing tools that in a way help also those medical professionals handle a larger workload, and in a way making it easier for people to get access to healthcare. This was really inspiring. Thank you so much. We have a lot of, yeah, let's give another round of applause. Our impressive lineup just continues this afternoon, and I'm excited to welcome on the stage with us Taryn Southern. Taryn is an award-winning storyteller and a creative technologist known for her groundbreaking creative experiments. She has created over 1,500 videos, garnering more than 1 billion views, served as an early advisor to companies like YouTube, Google VR, and Snapchat. Taryn, we're very excited to have you with us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Hello. Great to meet you all. I'm so impressed with the work that you are doing. It's incredible. I guess I'd start this little chat that we have by asking a question, which is, have any of you been using AI for creative projects?
No, not really.
No, not yet. What about the rest of you?
So I've been learning how to code Python for the past like year, and I would say I'm a beginner. And another question I've asked AI is like, how can I make money using Python? Like, what can I do? And it's actually gave me some very creative answers. It's like said web scraping, that can make me a lot of money as just like a business.
You're very entrepreneurial, I can tell.
Thank you.
That was not what I had in mind when I was thinking about creativity, but that works.
So it's just, and I asked it to go deeper on in that subject and web scraping, and it gave me a step-by-step process on how to do it. And it told me all the links, what to do, like where I should learn, how I could learn it. It's just been a very helpful tool with my creativity. I think it's actually expanded it.
Love that. All right. Well, my journey to AI is a little bit of a strange one. My first real experience with AI was with the original AI, American Idol. I was 17 years old and lived in Wichita, Kansas, which is not exactly the entertainment capital of the United States. And the only real opportunity to be seen as a singer was, of course, to audition for this crazy show. So I talked my parents into allowing me to drive cross country from Kansas to Los Angeles to sleep outside with 30,000 other hopefuls at the Pasadena Rose Bowl. And I made it. I made it past the first round. I made it past the second round. I got into the semifinals in Hollywood. And by the time I got into the semifinals, my imposter syndrome was so large because all of these other young adults that surrounded me had deep musical expertise. They knew how to play instruments. They'd grown up singing on various stages. And I couldn't do any of that. I also couldn't dance. I had 2 left feet. So getting up on stage was very terrifying for me. And in the final round of American Idol, the semifinals, I get up on stage live on television It was at the time the #1 show in the United States. And I forget all of my lyrics. I just stood there, just completely frozen as music played behind me. Okay, I don't know what your worst nightmare is as a teenager, but I promise you, going back to school was pretty traumatic. And I said, I'm never going to get up on a stage again. I'm never going to perform again. And about 12 years later, I came across an article in the New York Times about music companies using AI to compose. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is fascinating. What? I could compose music with this technology? Because I'd always been attracted to technology. I've been using technology in my career since I was young. And so I reached out to some of these companies and started experimenting with the early music compositional softwares in AI. This was in 2017. And cut to about 3 months after my first AI music experiment, I released my first pop AI composed single, which I'll play a little snippet of for you. Break-in free, not bacon free. But I guess it could work both ways. Thank you so much. And this song ended up making it in the top 100 of the radio charts in 2018, which is absolutely wild for someone that thought I would never sing again. And I tell this story because it perfectly encapsulates my feelings about AI as a creative tool. There's a great quote by Ed Catmull, who was president of Disney, about how we all have this ability to creatively express ourselves, but there's these hidden barriers and limitations that exist in all of us without us even knowing it. And in my case, my limitation was I lacked deep musical expertise. I also had a terrible fear of performing live after my traumatic experience on American Idol. But I still had this deep desire to express myself, and I love to sing. And so now I had this tool that enabled me to actually overcome these limitations. And that really sort of marks, I suppose, my journey to AI, how I feel about AI. And I'll just say, let me skip a couple of slides because I don't know if we have the time, but this is a diagram of my creative process before AI came along. And it's a big kind of sticky mess of problem after problem after problem. And there's something beautiful about the creative process, right? Especially if you're working on a really hard project like a book or a film, it just takes years, thousands of hours to get it right. And so there is something beautiful about that. And as you're working on these projects, it's not just like one of those sort of hairballs. You have like 10 hairballs. And as you're working through each of the hairballs, you're actually developing your own internal algorithm for what works, what doesn't work in your creative process. And you do this over and over and over and over again. And congratulations, you've now become an expert. You've put your 10,000 hours in to become a creative genius, if you will. And like I said, that's a beautiful process, but there's also another way. One that doesn't necessarily require 90% process and 10% creativity. And I think it's using these tools that really help enable new possibilities for us that can reduce down the friction in the process so that we can spend more time with expression, more time with preferences, more time, actually just prototyping an idea over and over again. So in theory, you don't really need 10,000 hours or 1,000 hours to share your creative magic with the world. You just need to know how to communicate with AI. And you all are way ahead of the curve. I mean, a lot of you have far more technical knowledge than I do. The great thing about where we are now with these AI systems is you don't actually even need to know code. These no-code app tools, I'm using them and they are amazing and powerful. And so for someone like myself to be able to bring anything to life with simply communication tools is really, really exciting. So I'd love to just kind of hear from you all, what are some of the ways that you're thinking about applying AI over the next 5, 10 years? I mean, it was great to hear your presentation. That was absolutely extraordinary. And I'm a breast cancer survivor, so that really touched me. So I can already see the ways that you're using it in these creative ways to reduce limitations that exist. But please tell me if there's any other creative ideas that you've had about how to implement AI or how you've seen your friends implementing AI in unique ways.
Some creative ways I have for implementing AI is like, of course, I've mentioned it before when I first got on here, is using it to develop video games and using it for music and art. Those are really good ways to implement it and really creative ways. But my focus is more on the video games part because that's what I'm trying to do right now.
Are you designing the games with AI or prototyping them? What's the use that you're currently thinking about?
Probably like prototyping it with AI.
Very cool.
I think one more idea, which I'm still also like, I'm curious to hear what you think, because I feel like there's like a very fine line between like authenticity and like using AI. But like, so I was in India over my winter break, and I noticed a lot of very interesting things about my time there and decided to actually write about it. But in the process of like writing, I had so many different ideas that were going through my head. It almost looked like the diagram that you had up there. And so I wrote down all my ideas in a very, very like first draft, messy way, like almost like if I was texting it to a friend, and had like AI kind of tell me, how do I organize this? Like I just wanted to honestly journal, but it was a daunting process to even journal that because I wanted it to sound good. But I had like so many original creative ideas, but I didn't know how to like translate those ideas into writing. And so I used AI as like a tool there to kind of help organize my thoughts and organize the flow of this writing piece that I wanted to write about my time in India. But obviously, like there's also like a line there that's like how authentic is that to me if I'm using it to help organize my ideas? And so I think I could see it being used as a tool to help translate like the ideas that you have into like an organized, cohesive piece of writing. But I also wanted to also authentically represent my style. So I'm just kind of curious, like how you recommend balancing that line.
Can I just ask a follow-up
Yeah.
question? As in, like, what did you think of the result?
Oh, it was amazing. I sent it to my family, I sent it to my friends, and it was a very good read. And I was very proud of it because it wasn't like those ideas, everything that I was like writing about were still like my original ideas. It was a daunting process to have to like articulate all of that. So
Bella, you mentioned earlier that you're into music when we were talking. Would you see yourself using some of these tools in making music?
I would just like use it to like make a song and just like use it for music.
Have you tried it?
Yeah,
What did you think of the result?
it was good.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah, and this is an interesting question, which you brought up, which is there something lost perhaps in using these tools to arrive at a creative destination without having to put in all of the muscle that would have been required pre-AI? And the truth is, I don't actually know the answer to that because I didn't grow up with AI. So I did have to put in the 10,000 hours. I mean, I think about some of the early days of creating YouTube videos. I had to digitize tape. I know you guys don't even know what that means. But trust me, it's really annoying. There was no, you would have to like run a tape recorder to digitize it to your computer and then use codecs. And I mean, it would take so long to edit one YouTube video. It was absurd. And now everything is just so much easier. And so I guess there is an interesting question is, do we lose something in this process of using these tools? But I think the benefits far outweigh those question marks. And in some ways, you can almost reverse engineer a creative process by working with these tools to allow yourself to find these different ways of expression. And then, you're also outputting so much more to the world.
I think we're going to be diving deeper into this issue with Lina's presentation after a short break. I had one final question to you. So if one of these songs wins a Grammy, who wins a Grammy?
That's a really good question. I have no idea. I'm guessing it will be that's more of a legal question, unfortunately, at this day and age. Is what software were you using?
ChatGPT with you on stage. Yeah,
exactly.
Good. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much, and it was so nice to see all of you.
Thanks. And we'll take a short break. to set up for the next creative experiment, and we'll be right back. Thanks so much. On a theme that's very close to the heart of every Angelino, which is music and creativity. It's part of what makes this city amazing. Our next truly impressive speaker is Lina Dean. Lina is a computer science and AI major at the University of Pennsylvania and a former performing cellist. Lina will discuss, and not only discuss, but demonstrate the power, but also some of the ethical dilemmas of AI in making
and understanding music. Lina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tommi. So yeah, I'll be talking about AI in music specifically. So the first thing that I wanted to touch on is that AI is actually already making music, and it has been making music for a very, very, very long time. And almost everyone in this room has probably already heard it. Just to give a little example, this is a mashup between The Weeknd and Drake, done, I believe 5-6 years ago. Just as an example. Pretty sure everyone has heard this. It was very famous on TikTok during the pandemic. Okay, so now that we've established that AI has been in the music industry for a very long time, I want to talk a bit about the historical evolution of AI in music. Surprisingly enough, the presence of AI in music started in the 1950s, so almost 70 years ago. It started with something called the rule-based systems, which is basically where the production of AI heavily relied on deterministic algorithms, which is basically predefined rules, musical rules that we have when it comes to our former speaker was talking about this too, but we have harmonic and melodic rules that we follow when we write music. And what these people did is essentially they just taught these rules to an AI model, and these systems would run. Now, these systems had a lot of flaws, some of them being that they are very rigid and they are not adaptable. So they lack the creativity part of the thing. 40-ish years later, in the 1990s, there was a new model that was introduced, which is the statistical model. This model followed the probabilities and statistical stuff that makes sense. So what it would basically do, we call it, first of all, we call it the hidden Markov models. We feed the AI model a lot of data, and we make it predict the most likely note sequence, and it would compose a piece upon this logic. Now, this also had a lot of flaws because it was very short-ranged, because on the long term, it has to still abide by a lot of musical rules in order for the music to make sense and for it to be a full circle moment. When we listen to music, you'll notice it's the beginning of the music is one thing, and then in the middle, there's like a transition or something that is different. We call it sometimes a bridge. And in the end, it comes back to the original and it ties all of it together. And this model really struggled with that. And then that brings us to the deep learning revolution, which is now. It started in 2010-ish, which shifted the whole mindset of music composition from predefined rules to data-driven learning. When we're talking about deep learning and music composition, we're talking about recurrent neural networks and memory networks, which is basically memory retention, same as us humans, and melodic and harmonic continuity, so that we solve the problem of this long-term music compositions. We also have something new that's called transformers. It was introduced through resources like Jukebox and so on. And what these do is, one, they introduce a lot of creativity into the picture, but also they play a huge role in the coherence of the music pieces. And of course, this is something that's quite recent, which is the audio synthesis and being able to use people's voices and mimic artists' voices in compositions. But how does AI actually create music? So when we're talking about composition, we're talking about two main concepts. First thing is music representation and data processing, and then second thing is the neural architecture of music. When we're talking about music representation and data processing, we're talking about the math of music. So we're talking about two primary formats, which are symbolic representation, which is the harmonic and the melodic structure. Here we're talking about something that is almost like binary code. What we do in symbolic representation is we take this melodic and harmonic structure and we convert it into discrete notes and rhythms, which is basically the computer's language of comprehending this data. And then the second format is the raw audio representations, which is basically that AI listens to these recordings and it captures the tone, the dynamics, the articulation, all of that stuff. Because when we listen to music, it's not just a sequence of notes. We have different volumes, we have different articulations, as in like the music is a language, it's not code. The neural architecture of AI is essentially, arguably, the human aspect of it. When we're talking about the neural architectures, I will talk more about this later on, but we're talking about recurrent neural networks, transformers, and generative networks. And generally speaking, the goal of all of these three is more expressive and realistic AI compositions. We're talking also about multi-instruments. We're talking about more than one layer. We're talking about very comprehensive, very sophisticated music, rather than very monotone and very simple music that we just derived from already existing compositions. Now, I think everyone heard the Barney song, I Love You, when we were young. You guys know it, right? I love you, you know? So this is a question that I think is very interesting. I think we hold a lot of sentimental value when it comes to music that we grew up with ever since we were kids. Now, if AI rewrote this music, do you think our emotions towards these people, these pieces would change? And do you think we'll be able to accept them? Or do you think they're invading like an emotional space that they're not allowed to invade? So what I did is I put in the I Love You song to an AI model. I had nothing to do with this, by the way. There's zero contribution from my side. I'm just going to hear this music and then let's see.
You love me. We're a happy family with a great big hug. Get a kiss from me. Won't you stay and love me too? I love you, love you. You love me, love me. We're supposed to be a family. I love you.
Okay. That's for the app, not for me. I didn't do anything here. And the point that I wanted to discuss through this example is really that we see music as humans for its aesthetic quality, of course, but also the human intention behind it, our connection to this piece. And the question that I guess this question raises is that if AI could produce this content that is indistinguishable from human-created content composition, then our perception should be neutral, because if we can't tell the difference, then why are we being biased? Studies have shown that we actually can't tell the difference. We still haven't we haven't developed this ability. AI has also grown to be able to replicate emotional impact, to replicate human emotions, and to replicate this thought process that musicians go through when they compose music. So now to test this theory, I have two songs for you guys. One is generated by AI, and one was written. The piece that was generated by AI is the composer of that piece, who generated it using AI, is in the audience today. And then another piece that was generated by, it was composed by a person. So we're going to listen to both, and then I'm going to have you guys guess which one's composed using AI and which one's a human one.
What have we been? Faded lights, desert skies, have we come? Designed by the blind, there's no way to win, no escape route I can find. Without
Okay, this is song 1. Remember this. Now song 2. Okay. Okay, can we guess? Who thinks the first one is human?
Let's take a vote here also at the panel. Yeah.
No one thinks the first one is purely human? The first one? We have two people. You two? Okay, so we have two people. And then who thinks the second one is human? Okay. I mean, I guess statistics are not true because it's true. The second one is the one that I don't know if it's because you guys saw the name. Oh. And the first song, by the way, was composed by Taryn, who just spoke like a few minutes ago. Okay, and now I want to talk about the idea of, can AI truly understand music? We said AI has developed music using different tactics, probabilities, data sets, all of that stuff. But on a neuroscientific level, the way we comprehend music as humans is through three different, it activates three different parts of our brain. The first part is the limbic system, which is responsible for emotional responses. The second part is the prefrontal cortex, which anticipates and processes musical structures. And the third part is the auditory cortex, which deciphers melody, harmony, and rhythm. And so although AI does lack the cultural and emotional experience and this cultural story and this struggle or this fantasy that comes behind the music, what it can do is that it can produce music and patterns that mimic the same thing as the person that has went through all of these stuff, triggering the same parts in our brains, and so giving us essentially the same experience at the end. And so if we think about it truly, does that mean that the music that AI produces is evoking genuine emotional response, or is it because it's artificial and it's almost plasticky? Like if we imagine it visually, does that make the emotional parts completely go away? And I think we can discuss it later, but I think it's something that is biased. I know usually when we talk about bias, we talk about humans, but now I think we can be biased towards AI too. Okay, I don't want this to be too boring, so let's make some music. Do we have a volunteer? We're gonna make some music using AI. Come on. We're gonna make this very simple. We're just going to what's your name?
Edward. Edward Sabi.
Okay. Are you a musician?
I play piano.
For how many years? So there are different steps. So you can come closer because you're gonna have to choose something. So first thing you're gonna have to choose, you have a lot of options, by the way. You should choose like a style. So you can listen to it here. This is ancient. You can also choose something that is a bit more new. Go ahead. You can also scroll through here. Okay. Okay, so now what it's doing is it's generating a base for us to start with. Okay. Okay, now we're going to listen to the bass and we're going to see if you want to make any modifications. So these are just the chords. Do you like this?
Yeah, I like this chord progression. Sounds nice.
Okay, do you want to add something that is a bit more intense in the middle, or do you want to keep it chill?
Maybe we could add something that adds a little bit of pop. I mean, this is a little bit repetitive.
Yeah, so this is just the bass. And now we're
Okay,
going to
yeah.
add the layers to it. Okay. And what it's doing now, it's choosing instruments and it's creating the layers that we talked about. It's going to take a sec, I think. Let's see. Let's edit this a bit because it isn't nice, right? We can regenerate layers, but we can also regenerate them manually. Let's go layer by layer. What do you want to start with?
I mean, let's go with the melody first.
Okay. Do you want to change the instrument?
Sure.
Do you want to edit the notes or do you want to keep these?
Let's keep the notes.
Okay.
I like it.
We can also regenerate the melody entirely if you want to do that.
Okay, let's try.
Let's try.
We
Okay.
could do different things. Is there any way to go back?
We can go back.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
You want to go back?
No, I just want to see, like, what if there's another melody that it regenerates and maybe I don't like it as much. Maybe can I like undo it and go back to see if I could find that same melody that sounded better?
Yes, you're right. Yes. Okay. Let's hear this. Mind you, this is just like the inspo for the piece that it's going to generate.
Yeah.
But we're editing the inspo. What do you think? What other changes can we make? We can change the trombone here. It's too loud. Okay, do you have ideas? I'm just.
Want to try changing the bass?
You want? Okay, we can do that. Do you want to generate something new, or do you want to keep this?
I want to generate something new.
Okay. Let's see. Uh-oh. Where did the melody go? No melody anymore. Huh. Let's try. I'm going to try to regenerate this because I don't know why it disappeared. You want to do a piano?
Yeah, sure.
Which one? Electric piano, maybe?
I mean, I guess that works. Maybe we could. I was wondering, we could try a harpsichord.
A harpsichord, okay. Okay, and then after, okay, let's go. Let's see.
I want to see if it sounds good or not. I'm just testing, you know?
Okay. Okay, are you satisfied?
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
can I ask a question?
Yes.
So when this AI is generating the notes, does it always try to generate notes that make sense with the piece? Or is there ever any occasion where the notes don't really match the other layers of the music?
I mean, I think there's always a layer of preference when it comes to music and creativity, but it's the algorithm of the thing is programmed to fit the music structure logically. So when when we compose music, how there are rules that you have to adhere by, like you can't just block notes altogether. So I think it does abide by those rules, but then what you like and what you don't like is up to you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay. Let's make it short, right? Then we'll wait for a couple of seconds. So this is just like one example of the many AI apps out there. This is a very simple one that you can use, so you don't have to code, you also don't have to compose raw music, but you can also import files that you have already created and go from there. And last off, I want to talk about the ethical dilemma behind generating music like this. Copyright and ownership is a huge deal when it comes to music, and AI-generated music is still a gray area when it comes to the legal aspect. Current legal frameworks only give authority and copyright to a piece of music if it was entirely composed by a human. And others also argue that AI-generated music should be a public domain, enforcing the idea of it being accessible to everyone, but also because this AI model was only made possible because of the millions and millions of tracks that were fed into it in order for it to help you, which is why you don't have the right to own it. It's for the public because it was generated from the public. This is still a very controversial question that's not answered. It's just food for thought to think about. What is your opinion about this? Personally, I agree with the fact that these music domains have to be for the public, while still given rights informally for the person that composed the music with AI, just because as a musician, you still put in a lot of work to compose music. Sometimes you just do it on an app. So I think specifying all of that stuff is something that is very important. Another thing that I also want to touch on is deepfake music. So he also touched on deepfake pictures. Deepfake music is also another ginormous problem. Deepfake music is basically when you steal an artist's voice and you use AI to make the same voice sing your own song. And this is done without the artist's consent, which is a ginormous problem for authenticity, for the identity of the artist, for the copyright of their voice, and for all of that stuff. This is another question. This is another dilemma that we have yet to answer. And so final thoughts about this. I believe that AI is never going to replace musicians. I think the importance of musicians in the music industry will forever be there and will forever play a ginormous role in the creativity process of the entire thing. I do believe the presence of AI as a co-composer in this industry will just enhance and give us more room to play, and it will help us create more rich and more sophisticated music. And we should continue to work with AI instead of against it to push the boundaries of our current composition skills and production skills, and just embrace the tools that we have. And that was all.
That's amazing. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time to have a discussion here on the floor, but I would love to invite here to conclude the session in Los Angeles by inviting on stage with us Rafi Krikorian. Rafi is the Chief Technology Officer of the Emerson Collective, a passionate democracy advocate, and a board member of TUMO with an incredible professional background in Twitter, Uber, first Chief Technology Officer of the Democratic National Committee. Welcome.
Thanks, Tommi. And thank you guys. Like, this actually has been amazing to listen to. I've been reflecting a lot in the back that, you know, you are the first AI native generation, right? In a lot of ways, like people like me, you know, I've been building using AI for my entire career, but I'm relearning how to do it with generative AI, whereas you guys are starting your careers or starting your lives or like being this AI native world. And so I think a lot about this like trifecta of tech, humanity, and power. Like, you guys are building a lot of interesting technology or using a lot of interesting technology, and that's changing the world, like healthcare or infrastructure or music. I think a lot about humanity, because like what you were saying, Cash, like what does it mean to interact with one of these things? What does it do to my emotional, my EQ as I'm talking to one of these machines? But I also mean humanity in the sense of, if these systems can pass bar exams, can create music, can do all these things, what have I been doing for 45 something years? Like, what's my brain been up to that, like, if these systems can now do it, like, what's it really mean about my soul in a lot of ways? And then the last thing I think a lot about is power, of like, you guys are fundamentally changing the power dynamic in the world. Like, you can now use technology in a way that wasn't possible 20 years ago and can impact in the world in very different ways. So maybe that's a long way of asking. The question I'm really interested in is, how do you all think about empathy? So like when you interact with a human, there's like an emotion on the other side. Like if you ask for someone for help, they might feel your pain for a second. If you ask someone for, as a question, they feel you being confused. If you ask someone for help in creating music, they want to like be generative with you. They want to, like, generative pun tongue in cheek, but they want to be creative with you. These systems is a statistical model that's just doing stuff in the background. How do you all think about empathy when it comes to this type of technology?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think that's part of what I was actually trying to get at with my keynote, and I wanted for us to all discuss this. I'm really glad you brought this up. I think like at the moment, these like AI technologies, they don't have a consciousness or like a brain of their own yet, keyword yet, and hence are not able to mimic and replace like human to human connection and human emotion. However, I think that like for me, like you said, I really value like in an interaction when like a human, I can like see and like physically feel what they're like feeling, right? And also I'm able to kind of decipher that from their like their voice fluctuations, their facial expressions, their tone, and how they actually speak. A lot of which AI technologies can't necessarily mimic or yeah, or do the same. So I guess like your question specifically was about like, do we think the technology will be able to reach that, or is it more?
Do we need it even? Like maybe that's even the question. Like, you know, if we think about the healthcare purpose, like you're going to deliver bad news to somebody maybe at one point. Like, do I want bad news delivered to me by an iPhone app, or do I want bad news delivered by a person, or does it not matter?
I would say the person, but I'll let her talk a little bit more about the healthcare sector specifically.
I think that was the question that was coming to mind as he spoke was, to what extent do we want AI to be able to feel the pain with you and for AI to be able to bounce off ideas? I think that there's a lot of great practical usage, and I think maybe it is really useful for AI. Maybe we do want it to develop that brain of its own and its own emotions, but I also think that there's a very fine line. And if we start to look for AI to become a human, then that's when we give it the power to replace humans.
I mean, let's think about this in music for a second. I mean, I listen to Taylor Swift, like I can hear her emotions in the music. Does it matter again? Like if it's just like a computer stringing together words, like does it matter if I enjoy it, or is it lacking something else?
I think first of all, AI has the power to create music that has these emotions in them. I talked about like the neuroscientific part of it that's behind it. And I think we can apply the same thing to all of the aspects that you talked about. Like we can trigger what we call empathy, but what is really just connections between our neurons and the way we phrase our voices and the tone that we use to deliver the same message. When you ask if empathy is even important, I think it's very important when something as big as AI is rising, that we don't become AI. We created AI because we are superior to AI. What makes us as humans so powerful and what sets us apart is our ability to be able to combine the analysis with logical thinking and with human emotion. This is what makes us human, this combination. And I think the second we lose that, then what value do we have for our lives? Like if you don't have empathy, if you don't have human emotion, then what difference does it make if you are doing the work, or if you are delivering the news as a doctor, or a machine is doing it? And if we lose our purpose on this earth, then I think the mental aspect on the level of the earth is ginormous.
Maybe I go back to Ben, your earlier point about smart friend. And maybe the question to everyone in the front row, like what is something that your physical, three-dimensional, in-person, real friend can do that AI, at least not yet, can do? What's like a concrete thing that a friend of yours can do that AI can't do?
So the question is, what can my friend do that AI can't do? Well, first, AI doesn't really understand my feelings and can't understand empathy, compassion, that a real friend can understand, especially a smart one. So
what is something that like a friend of yours can do?
Just like what he said, empathy and feelings.
Well, Vic.
Like a friend can know like what you enjoy, what your interests are, and they can, let's say they're trying to teach you something, they can relate it to your interest to help you understand it better. Unlike AI, which is gives it off the web.
Maybe as like the closer, on the scale of like pessimistic to optimistic, like where do you all land? Like we just went through 20 hours of talking about AI, all the awesome benefits, some concerns. Where are you all landing?
So if we put that on like a scale of 1 being, I'm not sure I can sleep at night, to 10, this is really exciting. Where are you at the moment?
I think it's difficult to put a number on that, but I would say I'm somewhere between like, I would say 7 to 8. I think that AI, I think I mentioned this before, I think we've never seen anything like AI, and that's amazing, but that's also really scary. And I think that we need to ask ourselves the question of what do we want AI to do, and what do we want to take it to a certain level, or do we want to stop somewhere? What's the limit? Because I think that that's really, AI isn't going anywhere, but we do have the power to determine like what we let it do and like how we manage to keep ourselves relevant and what role the interaction is going to play.
I'd put myself at a 4
Oh.
or like a 4 or a 5. Yeah, I'm not like
Drama.
no, like I'm not just saying like I completely agree that there's like enormous there's transformative potential with AI and like that we've never seen anything like it. I just don't think that like from my experiences that like people are like when I say people I mean like lawmakers and like regulators are taking this like super seriously, especially in the US. Maybe like in the EU, maybe more so, but yeah, I just haven't seen like the appropriate guardrails that I think are necessary, especially when like things like this are possible, like what Lena showed us. And this is like a more so like unproblematic use case, but I think I was telling Ashley earlier, there's like quite literally like deep fake websites that any one of us in this room could simply upload a photo of and boom, like our lives are ruined. So I don't know, not to be a pessimist, but I'm at like a 4 or a 5 here, unless we see some action being taken soon.
I think I'm a 9, actually.
This is awesome.
Because I think I genuinely, like, I agree with what you said, but like, no offense, but I genuinely believe our generation has been doing such a great job at being so woke and being truly aware. I wouldn't say 100% aware, but a bit more aware than generations before us. And I truly believe that when we're uncomfortable, there's big change and there's big growth happening. So I believe in embracing it instead of fighting against it. So believing that it's a 9, so it becomes 9, manifesting it.
I say like a 5 also because we can use it for good, but there are also the big cons of it, like the deep fakes and all that. So yeah, I stand around a 5.
I think I would say 10.
Oh, wow.
I'm an optimist in general, and I feel like we have enough control over it where if something gets out of hand, we'll be able to stop it pretty much immediately. We have engineers all over the world who are experts at this stuff, so I don't see it getting out of hand.
I think I'm like an 8 because like there's like pros and cons. And
I mean, I don't know where you land, Tommy, but like I'm optimistic. This is gonna sound super cheesy. I'm optimistic because of these guys. Like I'm optimistic because like they're in like way more in the driver's seat than I would have bet. Like I think like you're actually like trying to shape things. You're actually trying to talk to lawmakers. You're actually building things. You're actually showing us examples. I'm actually super optimistic because of that.
I'm a political scientist like Kash as well. So I think I'm between 5 and 6 at the moment, partly because of the reasons that you mentioned, that I don't think our generation has done a great job, or the older generations, in regulating this stuff, or even paying enough attention. This, I might need to like sleep on it, but like tomorrow, based on what I've heard from you, I think I would be open to moving to 8.
I'm gonna bet on them. It's where I lay to. I mean, I guess maybe this is the perfect place to call it. Like, thank you all. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you all for showing up in LA and helping us with the LA side of this. And so I guess with that, we have a 5-minute montage that we're going to show of all across the world of what the last couple of hours have really looked at in this conference. So again, thank you, everyone. Thank you from LA, and stay tuned for this montage.